went to visit my brother in the city. The brother everyone calls a billionaire, a success, a man with everything. I packed homemade food, cleaned my best shirt, and told myself he would be happy to see me. But what I found behind his front door broke my heart in a way I didn't know was possible at my age. It showed me what money can do to a person and what it can destroy. I woke up before the sun that morning, my hands shaking as I buttoned my old shirt, the only decent one I had left. I pressed it as flat as I could with my hands because I don't own an iron, and I wanted to look at least a little presentable for my brother, the billionaire everyone talked about. I packed a small bag with the food I cooked the night before, his favorite dishes from when we were boys, the ones we used to fight over when we were hungry. I knew he had money now. He could eat anything he wanted. But I told myself maybe a taste of home would still mean something. To him, I put in a small gift too. Nothing expensive, just a simple watch I saved up for. Because I wanted him to have something from me that wasn't cheap in effort, even if it was cheap in price. I held that bag like it carried my whole heart because in a way it did. At the bus station, people rushed past me, busy with their own lives. I stood there quietly, an older man with a worn-out bag, waiting for the bus that would take me to the city where my brother lived like a king. When the bus arrived, I climbed slowly, my knees aching with each step. But I didn't complain. Pain in the body is easier to bear than pain in the heart. I sat by the window, placing the bag carefully on my lap, keeping one hand on it for the whole trip. The road was long and bumpy, the seats hard, the noise loud, but I didn't mind. I spent the hours thinking about my brother, about how we used to play in the backyard as kids, how he used to look out for me when Mom and Dad weren't around, how proud I was when he got his first big job and started building his fortune. People on the bus talked about work, about bills, about struggles. But all I heard inside my head was my own hope. I pictured him opening the door with a big smile, saying, "Samuel, you came." I imagined him taking the bag from my hands, happy to taste my cooking again. I imagined us sitting at his table, laughing like we used to, just like brothers should. When I arrived at his building, the world around me felt like it belonged to someone else. Polished floors, guards in perfect uniforms, cars so shiny I could see my reflection. I walked slowly, trying to look confident, but my heart raced with nerves. His apartment door had the kind of gold numbers you only see in movies. I knocked lightly, once, twice. 3 times a shadow moved inside. Footsteps shuffled. When the door opened, instead of a wide smile, I saw shock. My brother's eyes went straight to my worn shirt, my shoes, my hands carrying the bag. "Why didn't you call before coming?" he asked, his voice polite but cold. No hug, no welcome, just that question. My heart sank. The bag of food felt heavier in my hands. For the first time, I realized I was no longer the brother he remembered. I was just a reminder of the life he left behind. Before I continue, tell, from which place are you watching this story right now? Please subscribe and like the video for motivation. The door opened just wide enough for me to slip inside, but not wide enough to feel welcome. I stepped hesitantly, holding my bag of food like it was a fragile treasure. The apartment was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the city below, furniture that gleamed like it had been handpicked by someone who never worried about money, and lights that reflected off polished surfaces so perfectly they almost hurt my eyes. Swallowed hard, trying to remember why I had come. I had pictured this moment for months. Every detail in my mind, the laughter, the smell of his favorite dishes, the warmth of family. But here there was only cold perfection. Not a smile, not a hug, not even a seat offered. He motioned vaguely toward the living area. "You can put that down over there," he said, his tone distant, almost like he was speaking to a stranger. I did as I was told, my hands trembling slightly. I watched him move around effortlessly, arranging some papers on the table, checking his phone, then glancing at a large screen mounted on the wall where stock, prices, and news ticked endlessly. His life had become a race I didn't understand. A world where money ruled everything, even family. Tried to start a conversation, anything to bridge the gap. "I brought your favorite dishes." Just like when we were kids. Remember the summers we'd fight over who got the last piece of pie? He didn't laugh. He didn't even look at me. "I don't have much time," he said. "Meetings, calls, deadlines. You know how it is." I nodded, forcing a smile that felt brittle. I thought maybe, just maybe, a little food and a little effort would remind him of the bond we once had. But it was clear that bond had been replaced by something else. Something I couldn't touch. Something his money had built around him like an invisible wall. I set the food down carefully, trying not to seem desperate. The aroma filled the room, but he barely glanced at it. Instead, he asked for the Wi-Fi password, and that's when I saw it clearly. The life he had built wasn't about happiness or family. It was about power, control, appearances. Every corner of this apartment screamed it. Every object polished. Every light placed for effect. Every smile missing. For a moment, I wondered if I had made a mistake coming here. Maybe money had changed him so much that he didn't even remember the boy who used to run barefoot through the fields. The brother who had shared secrets and dreams late into the night. Took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I wanted to remind him of home, of love, of the family that still remembered him, not the billionaire everyone else saw. But before I could speak again, he turned sharply, checking his watch. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes. I'll be back. I guess you can sit here or look around if you want. Try not to touch anything." Those words hit me harder than I expected. Try not to touch anything. In his own home, with his own brother standing there, I felt like a stranger, and yet I stayed. Because even if he didn't see me as family anymore, I couldn't walk away. Not yet. I had come all this way, and deep inside, I still hoped that somewhere under the suit and the perfect apartment, the brother I knew was still there, waiting for me to remind him who he once was. I sat on the edge of a sofa so pristine, it felt more like a display than a place to rest, my hand still clutching the bag of food as if it could somehow anchor me to the brother I knew. The apartment was breathtaking. Expensive art hung on the walls. Rare sculptures glimmered under perfectly positioned lights, and the air smelled faintly of perfume and polish. But for all its beauty, it felt hollow, empty, cold. I set the bag down slowly, careful not to disturb a single surface. Every corner of the room seemed designed to impress outsiders, not comfort anyone who lived here. And as I looked around, I realized the truth. My brother had built a life for the world to admire, not a life for the people who loved him. I wandered, almost unconsciously, through the apartment. Each room revealed a different layer of his new existence. The kitchen was modern enough to belong in a magazine, but there were no signs of the meals we once shared. No pots or pans out of place, no evidence of love or memory. The living room was full of furniture that screamed wealth, yet not a single book, no photo, no small token of a shared past. In the corner, I noticed a wall lined with awards, plaques, and framed magazine covers. My brother's face stared out at me from each one, smiling confidently, polished perfectly for the cameras. But beneath the shine, I could see something else, something I hadn't expected, a loneliness. Not mine, not the room's, but his. A quiet absence behind the perfection. Remembered the way he used to play with me as a boy. How he'd sneak me sweets from the corner store. How he'd tell me stories of adventure as if I were the hero. The boy I knew had warmth, humor, heart. This man was untouchable. I carried the bag into the dining area, hoping that a small gesture might remind him that I was still here, still his brother, still part of the life he had left behind. I arranged the food carefully. Each dish a memory, the pie we'd fight over, the stew he had loved after soccer practice, the bread I had baked specially for him. I hoped that the smell would wake something in him, even if just a flicker, but as I worked, I heard the faint buzz of his phone and saw him step into the room, not with a smile but with the same distant, controlled expression. He glanced at the food, barely acknowledging it. "I've got a client coming in an hour," he said casually, as if the dishes on the table were invisible. I wanted to shout, to shake him, to remind him who I was. But instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and simply said, "I just wanted to see you. That's all." He nodded, not meeting my eyes. "I know, and it's nice, I guess, but I've got a lot going on. Maybe later." Later. That word felt like a wall slammed shut between us. Later would never come if nothing changed. And in that moment, I realized that the real wealth he had wasn't in the money or the shiny apartment. It was in the power to control everything around him, including the way people approached him. And I had become someone he didn't know how to handle. Decided to walk further into the apartment, letting my eyes wander over the trophies of his success. And then I saw them, the photographs, not of us, not of our childhood, not of mom or dad. The walls were filled with pictures of him at galas, smiling with CEOs, shaking hands with politicians, laughing with strangers who mattered only in the context of status and influence. Every image told the same story. He was a man who had achieved everything the world could measure, but nowhere was there proof of the love he once had for his family. Knot formed in my stomach. I realized I had come here with hope, with love, with the desire to connect, and yet, all I had found was a stranger wearing the face of my brother. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run back to the bus, back to the village, back to the memories that still existed. But something held me there. A stubborn, painful hope that maybe, just maybe, beneath the suits, the polished floors, the empty smiles, the boy I knew still existed somewhere, so I stayed. I put the food on the table and sat quietly, watching him move through his life like a ghost. And I waited. And that's when I noticed something else. Someone else. Woman entered, impeccably dressed, perfectly composed. She smiled at him like she knew all his secrets, like she was part of the world he had built so carefully. Then she glanced at me and her eyes flickered, not curiosity, not warmth, but judgment. She looked at me like I was a relic from another time, a reminder of the man her partner had left behind. I realized then that the world he had created wasn't just about wealth. It was about distance. Distance from people who loved him, distance from the past, distance from me. And every step I had taken into his apartment, every hope I had carried with me, had brought me face to face with a truth I wasn't ready for. My brother had chosen a life where I no longer fit. I sat there, my heart heavy, my bag of food untouched, and understood for the first time what money could really do, not buy happiness, not preserve love, but create walls so high that even family could not climb them. I stayed frozen for a moment, sitting in the polished silence of his apartment, watching the woman laugh at something he said. Their eyes met, and she smiled in a way that made it clear she belonged there, inside his world, inside his life, inside his walls. And me, I was the visitor, the outsider, the reminder of a life he had buried beneath wealth and ambition. I tried to speak, but my voice caught. I brought food. I thought maybe we could. He cut me off, still not looking at me. Samuel, I told you. I'm busy. You don't understand how things work here. You can't just show up. I felt a pang of anger, sharp and bitter. Show up. I had traveled hours with nothing but love in my bag and hope in my heart. I had thought that blood meant something, that it was stronger than the golden walls he had built around himself. But apparently I had been wrong. I rose slowly, trying not to let my frustration spill out. I don't need to understand your meetings or your wealth, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I just wanted to see you, to be with you, even for a little while. Is that too much? He finally looked at me then. Not with warmth, not with recognition, just a controlled, polite stare. You don't get it, Samuel. Life is different now. People are different. I am different. I have responsibilities, real responsibilities. This isn't the life we grew up with. This isn't the world you live in, I wanted to scream. To shake him, to remind him that no responsibility, no fortune, no empire should ever erase family. But I knew it was useless. His world was carefully constructed, polished, untouchable. And I was just a ghost of the past trying to walk in, uninvited. I turned my eyes toward the table where the food sat untouched. Each dish was a memory, a piece of home, a symbol of love that had taken me weeks to prepare. And he hadn't even touched it. My heart tightened as I realized that the real tragedy wasn't the distance between us, it was the way he had chosen to ignore it entirely. The woman approached me, her expression polite but unmistakably wary. Do you want some water? She asked softly. Her voice was careful, like she was testing the boundaries of a guest who didn't belong. I nodded and she left, leaving me alone again, with the cold walls and the invisible barrier that separated us. I walked slowly to the window, staring out at the city that had swallowed him whole. The skyline glittered with ambition and wealth, but it felt hollow, like a world built on glass. Beautiful, impressive but fragile and empty inside. I could feel the weight of his choices pressing down on me. The brother I had known, the boy who used to share secrets and dreams, had vanished, and in his place was a man who had everything, except the one thing that truly mattered. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Maybe I'm the fool, I whispered under my breath. Maybe love isn't enough anymore. But then I felt it, a small flicker, a spark of determination. I hadn't come this far to leave without trying. If this was the brother he had become, then maybe I could remind him who he once was. Maybe I could break through the walls. Even just a little. I returned to the table, picked up the bag of food, and said firmly, I didn't come here to judge you or your life. I came because I'm your brother, and I refuse to let that mean nothing. I'm not leaving until we talk, until you see me, not as a stranger, not as a reminder, but as your brother. For a moment, the apartment was still. He paused, his hand frozen over his phone. The woman behind him stepped back, sensing the tension. And in that quiet pause, I saw something I hadn't seen in hours. The slightest flicker of recognition in his eyes. It wasn't warmth. It wasn't joy. But it was a crack in the wall, and for the first time that day, I felt hope. The apartment felt smaller all of a sudden, though it had always been massive. The walls that had impressed visitors now seemed to cage him, and I could feel the weight of his choices pressing down, not just on him, but on me, on the memory of who he had once been. I stood by the table, my bag of food still in my hands, and said softly but firmly, I didn't come here to shame you. I didn't come here to fight. I came here because you're my brother, and I can't just pretend that you don't matter. I can't just walk away while you build this world that has no room for the people who love you. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw the man he had once been, the boy who used to laugh until he cried, the brother who had held my hand during storms, the boy who had dreams bigger than the village we grew up in. But just as quickly it was gone, replaced by the polished mask, the cold, controlled exterior. You don't understand, he said, his voice tight now, the first hint of emotion cracking through. Everything I've done, it's not for me. It's for survival, for power, for legacy. You think I don't miss being normal? You think I don't remember? I stepped closer, holding my bag out like a peace offering, like a bridge. I know you remember. I know you do. But remembering isn't enough if it doesn't mean anything. You've built walls so high that even I, your brother, can't reach you. And maybe that's why I had to come. To remind you that someone still cares. That someone still sees you as you used to be. He turned away, pacing the room, voice rising in frustration. Caring doesn't matter anymore. The world doesn't care about us, Samuel. Only results matter. Only appearances. Only control! I shook my head, my chest tight, my hands trembling. But appearances can't replace family. Control can't replace love. And results. Results mean nothing if you're alone at the top. He froze, his back still to me. I could hear his breathing, heavy and uneven. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the inner battle he was trying desperately to hide. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. He had spent so long building a life to impress the world, to prove himself, that he had almost forgotten the people who had truly mattered. I placed my bag on the table gently, the aroma of home filling the room. Look at this, I said, my voice low but steady. This is from the life you left behind. Not money, not power. Not the people who nod politely at you because of what you own, but love. Real love. From the people who shaped you, who cared for you, who will always be your family. He turned to me slowly, eyes wide, and for the first time, I saw doubt, guilt, even fear. I don't know how to be that person anymore, he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. I took a deep breath, moving closer, my heart pounding. You don't have to know. You just have to try. That's all anyone ever asks of you. And I'm here right now to remind you that it's not too late. Not for us. Not for you. The woman behind him stepped back, unsure, watching silently. He sank into a chair, head in his hands, and I realized the empire he had built, the perfect apartment, the wealth, the control, wasn't as strong as the vulnerability that surfaced now. The man I loved as a brother was still in there, buried beneath the gold, beneath the expectations, beneath the distance. I sat down across from him, leaving the bag of food untouched but symbolic between us, a bridge that could be crossed if he wanted it. And in that room, filled with silence, tension, and unspoken memories, something began to shift. The walls had cracks now. And cracks, I knew, were the first step to letting light in. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the city outside the windows. I watched him sit there, head in his hands, the carefully maintained facade of the billionaire finally slipping, the polished apartment, the expensive furniture, the woman who seemed to hold a place in his life. All of it faded into the background. What remained was a man, alone with his guilt, his regrets, and the brother he had almost forgotten. He lifted his head slowly, eyes red, a mixture of frustration, shame, and longing flashing through them. I didn't mean to push you away, he admitted, voice shaking. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting myself. Everyone says I have everything, Samuel, but I feel empty. I thought I had to be this person, this image, but it's suffocating. I took a careful step closer, my heart aching. You've built an empire, yes, but an empire without family, without the people who care about you. It's hollow. Money can't fix what's been broken. Only you can. He leaned back, staring at the untouched food on the table. The very dishes that once symbolized joy and togetherness. His hand hovered over it, almost hesitating. I don't know if I remember how, he whispered. I don't know if I remember how to be me, the me I used to be with you. When we were kids, when life was simpler, when love was enough. I nodded slowly. You remember? You just need to let it out. Let go of the armor you've been hiding behind. Let me remind you who you are. Not the billionaire the world sees, but my brother. The one I grew up with, the one I loved. The one I never stopped hoping for. His shoulders slumped. He finally picked up a piece of the pie, holding it like a fragile bridge between the past and the present. He took a bite slowly, almost fearfully, and I could see something softening in him. A memory, a spark of familiarity. A glimmer of the boy I once knew. Tears formed in his eyes. Unbidden, and for the first time that day, I saw real emotion. Not performance, not control, not distance. Just him, my brother. The boy who had shared every secret and every dream with me. I don't deserve this, he said quietly. You shouldn't have come all this way. I shook my head gently. I deserved it just for loving you. And you. You deserve to feel what it's like to have someone care again, even if it's just me. He finally put the food down and looked at me fully. The walls around his heart starting to crumble. Samuel, I forgot what it felt like to be seen, to be loved without conditions, he whispered. I forgot what it felt like to be family. I reached out, putting my hand on his arm. It's not too late. You can remember. You can let it back in. The life you've built. Doesn't have to erase the family you have. The woman in the background watched quietly, unsure of what to do as the two of us sat there in silence, letting years of distance, pride, and misunderstanding dissolve into something fragile, yet real. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw hope. Real hope. Because the walls had begun to crack. And where there are cracks, light finds a way to shine through. The city lights, outside, blurred through the windows as we sat there. Two brothers in an apartment that had once felt so cold and unreachable. My brother, the billionaire, finally let himself be human again. The walls he had built around his heart weren't gone, but they were cracked, enough to let warmth seep in. He looked at me, tears still glistening in his eyes, and whispered, I forgot what it meant to be a brother. I forgot what it meant to have someone care without wanting something in return. I let money and ambition take over, and I almost lost myself and you in the process. I smiled, feeling the weight that had pressed down on my chest for hours begin to lift. You didn't lose me, I said softly. I'm here. I never left, and I never will. Family isn't something you can buy, and it's not something you can lose as long as you let it in. He leaned back, exhaustion and relief mixing on his face. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you. You do, I said firmly. You just needed to remember that some things are more important than money, more important than status, more important than the life you thought you had to live. He laughed softly, almost in disbelief. I think I've been living in a cage of my own making. And you reminded me there's a way out. That family is freedom. That love is freedom. I reached across the table, finally bridging the distance that had kept us apart for too long. He took my hand, and in that simple gesture, years of pride, hurt, and misunderstanding melted away. For the first time in what felt like decades, I saw the brother I had grown up with, not the billionaire the world saw. We didn't need words for everything. Some moments are too big for words. Sharing a meal I had brought, laughing quietly, letting memories of our childhood seep back into the room. These were the moments that reminded him and me that money could never replace family. And as the night grew late, I realized something that I had hoped for all along. Wealth could create walls, but it could never erase love. It could distract, it could blind, it could divide, but the bonds of blood, of memory, of shared history, were stronger than any fortune. That night, I didn't just find my brother, I found hope. I found the man behind the mask. And most importantly, I found a reminder that it's never too late to come home. to rebuild, and to let family back in.